Hello, BookTube. It's Wednesday, and that's the day when we talk about comics, but not new comics. There are new comics. They're scheduled. They're shipping. Lots of places in the United States have loosened their pandemic protocols or never installed them in the first place. So there are comics that are out there. Comic shops are in business, even in places that are being responsible and cautious. There's still curbside pickup. There probably is here in Boston to some extent or another. It's too much of a rigmarole for me. I want to be able to browse at a comic shop. But my doom and gloom predictions that would never happen again, that the comic industry would never revive, those were a little premature. So there are new comics, including, oh my, there's one today. Oh my, there's a big $100 anthology that comes out today that I would very much like. My wistfulness is lessened a little because my comic shop would not have had it. They wouldn't have carried it anyway. I would have had to special order it, and even then they might not have done it. So I can wait. But in the meantime, since we're not doing new comics, I thought we'd do old comics. We've just been doing old comics, going through my long boxes. That sound you hear is my bean destroying stuff in the background. So let's go through here and see what we can find. The first one is number 2 from 2011 of Young Justice. A comic book based on a cartoon, on an animated show on, I believe, the CN, on the Cartoon Network, featuring young superheroes, the tried and true legends of the DC universe. Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman and whatnot these guys are reduced to an advisory role, a sort of mentoring role for a group of younger characters. And the focus on this issue is Superboy. But not my Superboy, not Clark Kent when he was a teenager, but rather Connor Kent, a clone of Superman and Lex Luthor, that here fights the cartoon, the Young Justice version of the Joker. I got the issue because I was thinking it would center on him, and it does, but it made very little sense to me. The issue made very little sense to me because I didn't follow the comic or the cartoon at all. Did some of you? Am I missing something? Is Young Justice really good? But anyway, then we have the Legion of Superheroes, and the reason that I loved the teenage Clark Kent as a teenage Superboy is because of his adventures with the Legion of Superheroes, where he would go forward in time 1,000 years to the future and have adventures with a large group of superpowered teenagers called the Legion of Superheroes, who inducted him into their club as an honor because he was their inspiration from far in the past. I've bought the Legion in almost every one of its incarnations, and I have loved some of them more than others, but I've been a loyal Legion fan. And here we have, this is the New 52's Legion of Superheroes, written by Paul Levitz, who's a Legion of Superheroes titan in his own right, and drawn by Keith Giffen, who is another Legion of Superheroes titan in his own right. This storyline, this is number 17 and number 22. Number 22 concludes the storyline and doesn't have all Keith Giffen artwork. I believe this goes on to, this goes on to other people, to other artists. But the storyline in these last 4 issues, these last 5 issues, Legion was canceled after this, and the storyline in here is gigantically epic. In a way, I don't think these have been collected, and I don't know if they'll be canon. I don't know if the New 52 is considered canon. I find it hard to believe that it can be because Levitz takes a lot of liberties. He kills off Legionnaires in this storyline, willy-nilly he does, which you don't usually do in a Legion story. But I wish somewhere here I have all the components of this storyline, and I should gather them all together because I don't know if they're ever going to be collected. What do you do? How do you, if you're the bean counters at DC Comics, how do you assess the audience for a $15, $16, $17 trade paperback collection of a comic that was canceled? Do you assume that you have any readership? They'd be crazy not to when it comes to the Legion. Legion fans are extremely devoted. but still, I'll have to check and see. Now, okay, all right, then we have, this is one storyline from Thor, from the mighty Thor, Marvel Comics. Still only 25 cents. Now these things are $5 a piece, but they wanted to stress, that we're holding the line at 25 cents. This is John Buscema artwork. Who writes these things? Len Wein writes these things. And it's a story about an insurrection in Asgard. Here you have the first one. Thor is fighting a storm giant. Then you have the second one, a Jack Kirby cover with Hela, the goddess of death, who would be familiar to some of you non-comic book fans as the villainess of Thor Ragnarok. Then another Jack Kirby cover, another great Jack Kirby cover. There's Thor versus Ulik the Troll. Yet another Jack Kirby cover, a little busy this time, Thor versus the Mangog, with all of his supporting cast chiming in. And then no storyline, no Thor storyline to be complete without it. Then we have Thor versus his father, Odin. You can't have... Odin could never keep the peace with his son. But this is all one story about an insurrection in Asgard and the real villain behind it. Tremendously good. And again, I'm not sure that this is collected. It may be in the latest Marvel Thor Masterworks volume. I might have it in between hardcovers somewhere. So I'll have to check. I kept these issues anyway. Just I love them. Okay. All right. Then we have World's Finest. This was a comic that DC published where forever and ever there was just monthly team-ups between Superman and Batman. They went giant size. They went to a $1 comic along with a lot of other DC comics, and gave you lots of secondary material. Some of it new, some of it reprints. Some of which I liked, but of course I was only in it for the main story, for the main story of Superman versus Superman and Batman. This is World's Finest number 258. There you have some of the backup stories, including Captain Marvel Jr., I believe, has a backup story in here. Captain Marvel Jr. is a character. Yeah, he does. Oh, look at that. Wow. The Captain Marvel Jr. story is drawn by Don Newton, who would have been great. He would have been just a legend in comic books, but he died unexpectedly. Wow. Okay. He was terrific. He had a very distinct style of his own, even with Captain Marvel Jr., a character whose style book is very restrictive. But the main reason that I got this thing is because it's Jose Luis Garcia Lopez artwork. I've mentioned him before. I think he's fantastic. And you never know when he's going to be collected. I never know when he's going to be. At the time that this came out, this was in the 1970s. 1979, yeah. When this came out, I would never believe that any of this would be collected. So I kept this just because I love revisiting his artwork and don't know if I'm ever going to see it in a reprint. I think that DC is reprinting Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, at least his Superman stuff. So maybe this thing has been reprinted or will be. And then this other one it's an Action Comics annual. It's also Superman, and I also got it for the artwork. This is it guest stars Batman, and it's drawn. The whole thing is drawn by Art Adams, who is a fantastic artist, just incredible artist. He's very slow, and he's very meticulous. I don't think he gets a lot of work anymore. He probably supports himself, as so many of these artists do. He probably supports himself by doing original commissions at conventions. I mean, you sit at a table, you're Art Adams, people have fond memories of you from a couple of issues you did on the New Mutants or a couple of issues you did in DC Comics, and you just sit there and people come up to you and say, hey, Art Adams, it's so nice to meet you, I'm a big fan, can you draw me a picture of Batman arm wrestling with the Silver Surfer? You're never going to see that in a comic book because that requires the two companies, Marvel and DC, to team up, and they almost never do that. But he'll just do it, and he'll say, "Yeah, sure. Let me get your name and maybe your text or your phone number, so I can let you know. You will wander around the convention, and for $1,500, I will do this original piece of artwork for you. Give me an hour or two and come back. Because as you can see, I've got a bunch of other commissions. You just spend the day drawing, making 10, 20 times your page rate for an actual comic book, so you can come out of that thing with your expenses paid for a whole season." And that kind of, if your choices are that or having the whip cracked over your back to do, America Chavez or whatever, you probably won't do that. You'll probably just go for the easy money, especially if the convention is footing your traveling bill. So I don't see much in the way of Art Adams' artwork anymore. Probably this will be the awkward moment when one of you tells me that he died 10 years ago. But this next one is from the 1970s, I believe. 1974, and boy oh boy, we've seen both of these, the writer and the artist, here before. This is Superman, number 279. It's written by Elliot Maggin, who was a terrific, gimmicky, schlocky Superman writer that I adored, and it's drawn by the great Kurt Swan. Although not the cover. The cover is classic Nick Cardy. Just Nick Cardy covers stand on a mile, and that is just fantastic. There's Batgirl falling off a tall building and telling Superman not to save her. Just fantastic. But the focus in here, although Batgirl is on the cover, the focus is Batman. He is the main guest star here, and there's a great sequence halfway through where he's encountered some smugglers, and they tell him that they're outside the legal limit. They're outside the American waters, so he can't do anything to them. And he's punching them around. And he tells them at one point, I'm not so much interested in law as I am in justice. Without this oil, the entire city of Gotham would sludge to a halt. And besides, whether or not you were once outside the 3-mile limit will soon be quite academic, because Superman is lifting the whole tanker into the air. Look at that Kurt Swan artwork. Incredible. So I love this issue, and again, where would I find it? I have no idea where I would find it. A gigantic Kurt Swan omnibus of Superman would be really nice. 1970s Kurt Swan omnibus would be really nice. I imagine they'll get there, right? I mean, they've got those $150 omnibus of the Golden Age Superman. Those DC will keep doing those. So sooner or later, those volumes will start to include these stories. With the Superman had a huge... Oh, sorry, that's the next one, Tarzan. Superman had a huge run of these great Nick Cardy covers. What I wouldn't give to see them all just neat and clean, reprinted in a big hardcover volume. Maybe that will happen. So those Superman volumes are marching along. There are like 6 of them now. So sooner or later. Anyway, as you saw, the next one is Tarzan. This is from when DC Comics had the right to Edgar Rice Burroughs. And they got Joe Kubert to write and draw Tarzan. This is Tarzan number 213, and this Kubert is incredible. He's just amazing. Just amazing. All throughout all of these. These are adventures of young Tarzan. Some of them are canonical, where he adopts canonical Tarzan stories. Others are just freewheeling. Just amazing. I love these issues so much. I have quite a few of them. Talk about a collected volume that I would get. Oh my, Joe Kubert doing Tarzan. Probably there's a legal quagmire behind that, but I would do it in a minute. Then an issue of Action Comics, and the reason I got this is Gil Kane. This is written by Marv Wolfman, but it's a great standalone story about 2 kids from who are dealing with a world that is being invaded by aliens, and there's no Superman, there are no superheroes of any kind, and they have to make him. It's called If Superman Didn't Exist, and they dream him up out of their inspiration. And it's Gil Kane artwork. That's the reason I got this. But I wasn't expecting the story to be so touching, but I loved it. I loved it. Okay, all right. This is disappointing. Okay, there was for a while when Marvel had a thing called Supervillain Team Up, where Dr. Doom teamed up with the Submariner, even though the Submariner is not technically a supervillain. He sometimes works against humanity, but sometimes not, including famously fighting alongside the Allied superheroes during World War II. We saw that in many times. I've mentioned an old Submariner issue in which Betty Dean, the young, beautiful policewoman who often had a knack for calming the Submariner down back in the 1930s, in one issue of the Submariner, we see her again. She's an older woman. Time has passed. She's grown old in the normal course of events, whereas, of course, the Submariner has not. And that's a wonderful, touching issue. And Tony Isabella, for Supervillain Team Up, decided to bring back Betty Dean, and a couple of writers on Submariner's comic a decade later also decided to bring her back and make her a character, and just despoiling the beauty of that one standalone issue. And at some point along the way in all of that, she is transmuted into a scaly fish-type amphibian. Let me see if I can get you a picture of what Betty Dean looks like now. It's kind of ridiculous, yes. And in this issue, the Submariner has to fight against a whole bunch of heavy-duty superpowered beings, the Tiger Shark and a Tuma and whatnot, beings who at their full strength are almost as powerful as he is. And in the midst of the fighting, Betty Dean is cut down by a laser bolt and dies in the Submariner's arms, while all of his villains look on in astonishment because they can't really understand what they've just done. And I read that and thought, okay, that is really cheap as a way to end this character. But it was almost redeemed by the last panel. The Sal Buscema artwork's really good, where the caption is, for a very long time, it seems, no one dares to move, no one speaks. Then, Namor looks up. And the whole point, that is the final panel of this issue. And the whole point of that is to expect what will come in the very beginning of the next issue. I read that back in, what was that, 19 70s? 1975. There's a Gil Kane cover. I read that. I looked at that final panel, and then Namor looks up. And I thought, okay, Tony Isabella has been given permission by Marvel Comics to have the Submariner kill. Because that's exactly what this character would do. He would kill the human who fired the pistol and probably a couple of others. This would finally be the time where he simply kills Tiger Shark, or he kills Atuma, and that's just it. And that doesn't happen in the next issue. I kept this issue because I love that panel, but I didn't keep the other one because it immediately dissipates. It was a totally wasted opportunity. Oh, okay. All right, now we're back to Tarzan. But here, the Edgar Rice Burroughs Corporation gave the rights to... Once DC lost the rights to Tarzan, Marvel Comics got them. And they gave it to the aforementioned John Buscema. This is his first issue, though some of you will recognize the composition of this cover. It is a very intentional homage to Zoetrope All Story, to All Story magazine, that would look just like that for Tarzan's first appearance there. And this is wonderful John Buscema artwork. A white man is threatened by a lion, and Tarzan is right there. It's very simple stuff, very simple panel designs, a blood red background on that. Very good stuff. This Marvel got the rights to Tarzan and the rights to John Carter of Mars and did them both, launched them both in the same month, same week. I think it was the day that I went to the comic shop, and as an Edgar Rice Burroughs fan, I was overjoyed. And both of those runs on John Carter of Mars and on Tarzan started out strong and then petered out into just a monthly comic that wasn't anything epic or amazing about them, and which is the kind of game that you really have to bring to those characters to keep them from seeming derivative, even though they're not. The key to remember is that the reason they seem derivative is because you're thinking of all the stuff that was derived from them. They were the originals, but you still have to come at them with a lot of energy, and Marvel didn't do that. So I didn't collect the whole of either one of them. Although the Marvel Comics run of John Carter has been collected in a big hardcover anthology that's actually very expensive now online. I got a copy of it. It was remaindered at my comic shop for $50. And it had like 50 issues in it, so I got it and got rid of it. And then just the other day, I thought, well, maybe you want it back again. And it's hugely expensive online, so that's not worth it. And they never did an omnibus of their Tarzan run, because how could they? It's a legal quagmire. So much of this stuff is. I'm sure that DC would love to do that. Or Marvel would love to do that. I'm sure that DC would love to do it too. Imagine a big hardcover of the Joe Kubert run on Tarzan. Oh my. But they can't do it. Because, anyway. Then we move to the 1970s. Yes, 1974. This is the Legion of Superheroes. Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes. With another great Nick Cardy cover. This just can't go wrong with a Nick Cardy cover. And in this issue mostly features Invisible Kid. This issue actually features the death of Invisible Kid. He dies in this issue, and it's really moving. I mean, this issue has oh no, all right. Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes often had. Oh, look at that Mike Grell artwork, incredible. Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes often had a 7-page backup story. I thought for a minute this did, but no, it's the whole issue. But it is the death of a Legionnaire. That's no small thing. And I think I probably have this in some sort of Legion collection. But like I mentioned, DC is finally doing the Legion in big, monumental omnibus volumes. They've done 2 so far. The third one came out today. If you have a comic shop that's open, then it came out today. And they're still stuck in the 60s, but sooner or later those volumes are going to go on and include issues like this. I'm going to be right there for all of them. Okay, then we have Amazing X-Men, the Uncanny X-Men number 300 with a nice shiny foil cover. I don't really care about the X-Men. I only got this because of the John Romita Jr. artwork. I love his artwork. I just think it's fantastic. Right up to the present day. He's drawing Superman now. Which once upon a time would have been a dream come true, but I don't know where I stand on Superman now. Otherwise, I would be collecting just for John Romita Jr.'s artwork. But okay, then more artwork. This is Superman number 347. This is drawn by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, who does the cover. It's a very elaborate science fiction tale about a courier whose spaceship is lost in time as well as space and goes awry. Superman is almost an appendix to the story. The story is mainly just pure science fiction. Okay, then the Avengers. from 19. Is this going to be 1974? It is. Oh my God! All these in 1974. That wasn't planned. I promise. This is written by Steve Englehart and drawn by Bob Brown, who I don't think ever had a real flair for drawing the Avengers, but I think he's inked by Dave Cockrum. He's inked by Dave Cockrum, who is a better artist than Bob Brown, and he helps a lot with that. This is Avengers number 126, where they fight Claw, the master of living sound, and that is, I don't know exactly who does that cover, but it's heavily inked over by John Romita Sr. And this is a fairly explicit storyline about racism. There are a couple of racism points come up in here that are very well handled. Okay, then the Avengers, but this will not be 1974. This is 1971. This is Avengers number 88, an adventure that they share with the Hulk, who was an original Avenger but left the team right away. And this issue is noteworthy because it's one of the only Marvel comics where the story credit is to Harlan Ellison, the science fiction author. Okay, and then the Legion of Superheroes, great. This is part of the great 5 Year Later saga, where Keith Giffen, the artist that I mentioned, was given permission by DC Comics once upon a time to move the whole team 5 years in the future. So they're not kids anymore, and the universe isn't bright and sunny anymore either. It's a dark and dangerous place. And the 5 Years Later saga is incredible, just amazing. And this is a standalone story of an alternate future in that alternate future. Just an amazing issue. Oh my, just amazing. Difficult to summarize, but amazing. Okay, then we have this another thing just for the artwork. We've seen this already. This is Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, written by Roy Thomas and drawn by Mike Mignola. Topps Comics adapted the storyboards for this movie in a 4-issue miniseries, and it's all drawn by Mike Mignola, who's fantastic, and who went on from this to do Hellboy and become famous and independently wealthy, so that he doesn't need to do stuff like this anymore. And I kept these individual issues forever and ever because I thought, okay, well, this is another legal quagmire. No one will ever have official permission from Topps or from Francis Ford Coppola or from the movie production company to reprint any of this. But it turned out not to be true. There was a reprint, and I have it. I requested it from the publisher and got it. So I don't need these issues anymore. And then we finish up. Oh, wow. Oh, my. Okay, we finish up with an oddity. Wow. This is an artist I really, really like. His name is P. Craig Russell. And he's done a bunch of comics, but he also did a bunch of sort of weird standalone stuff. He's also a great artist for Elric of Melniboné. If you ever find any of his work for Elric, he's a fantastic artist for Elric. These are just non-denominational science fiction. They're no famous characters. One is Night Music, and one is Star Reach Classics. I don't know what these things are. They're Eclipse comics. I don't think these would ever be collected anywhere. And they are just science fiction short stories, basically, that are, if I remember, quite good. I'm going to have to leave these out and take a look at them again. B. Craig Russell's artwork is just sumptuously beautiful. And, again, I won't cast aspersions of any kind here, but... oh my. His backgrounds in science fiction landscapes are not the only thing in his artwork that's sumptuously beautiful. Let's just put it that way. Boy, oh boy, there are probably plenty of others. Wow, look at that. Uninked pencil work. Just amazing. I should hold these out and I haven't looked through these things in forever. And I don't know if there is like a big volume of P. Craig Russell, a commemorative volume reprinting his work. I don't know if there is or not. I should check into that and see, because that might be worth having. Boy, oh boy, I haven't looked at these in forever. I will set these aside. And that is it. That is your Comic Book Wednesday. It's just another blast from the past through my back issues. I'm just working my way through a white cardboard long box. So I will go on to the next one on Friday. And I will wrap this up for now, but I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.